1 store or Chapter 11 of Environmental Quality, Environmental Protection and Enhancement, Army Regulation 201. Well, we're at 44. Chapter 11 Storage Tank System Oil Hazard Substance Supply Spills. 11.1 Policy Management Tank Systems used on store oil hazard substances in an environmentally safe manner, prevent spills. These substances rapidly respond to spills. Legal and other requirements. A 42 U.S. Standard Code 9601, 42 U.S. Standard Code 33 U.S. Standard Code 26 is amended, including Part 11, Part 112, Title 40 Code Federal Regulation 40 CFR 112, Part 300, Title 40 CFR Code of Regulation 300, 42 U.S. Standard Code 6901 as amended, including in Part 280 and Title 40 Code of Federal Regulations of 40 CFR 280 and Part 281 Title 40 Code of Federal Regulations 40 CFR 281, 33 U.S. Standard Code 27001, 15 U.S. Standard Code 2601 as amended in Public Law of 10958, Section 150, 1521, and 1532, RAR 50-6 related to federal laws, regulation, or reinforced in Appendix A. Overseas and Army organizations' activities will comply with applicable final governing standards. 11.3 Major programming goal. Storage tanks used as transportation, store, or handle oil or hazardous substances will be managed to protect environmental and public health. 11.4 Program requirements. Storage tank systems provide leak detection, regulated underground stake storage tanks, UST debris, retrofit inventory control procedures. LD 40 CFR 280.43 provide leak detection, overfill protection, cathode protection for above ground storage tanks, the ASTs, and required to the LD 40 of the CFR 40 CFR 112.8. 3 Usable double wall construction will interstitially monitor on all new regulated USTs, and ensure that UST systems are cathodically protected and constructed in non-metallic manner to meet corrosion protection requirements. 40 CFR 280.20 Oil hazard substances spills, develop implementation spill prevention control countermeasurement and SPCCP as required by CWA Section 311J 40 CFR 112 OPA ensures SPCP and addresses secondary contaminant or lack of that thereof. Oil hazard material storages. LD 40 CFR 112-7 develop and implement facility spill contingency plan SCP for oil hazard material storage facilities has designed and adequately spill prevention structures in place of 40 CFR 112.7 ensure secondary containment and provide hazardous material storage facilities including piping if it is determined in secondary containment and is practicable for installation must address that the SPCCP facility SCP is only required if adequately spill prevention structures are not in place. LD 40 CFR 112S ensure SPCP as reviewed at least once every 5 years. Amended to the plan with 6 months of change. Material effects potential for discharge. If technical changes haven't been made, the plan must be signed and an individual authority to commit necessary resources to respond to releasing a certified and professional engineering familiar with the installation operations using the Environmental Quality Control Committee and to coordinate with SPCCP with affected installation elements and maintain accurately inventory SPCP applicable containers including the location of spatial extent of such containers of 40 CFR 112.7. 112.7 prepare spill responses and notification procedures to include facility response plans as needed for spills and caused by the Army actions, including coordination with local emergency planning authorities of 40 CFR 300.21 and 40 CFR 1112-20, 33 CFR 154, 49 CFR 130, 450 CFR 171, 172. Conducting training to ensure proper responses to spill and release includes annual spill response exercises for spill response organizations 29, 1910, and 112 0 EPQ 40 CFR 11221. Ensure the Garrison Committee designates in writing qualified on-scene coordinator at OSC responsible for the execution. Spill response local commander will designate in writing the OSC USR maintenance facility. The state adjutant general will designate in writing an OSC and the Army National Guard maintenance and facilities of LD 40 CFR 300-120. Ensure the facility operators OSCs standing for on-scene coordinator understand comply with federal, state, and reportable quantity requirements. Actually, the quantity requirements are covered in military tank 210. Mill Handbook 210. Will spill occurs, immediately report the spill and release of OSC's implementation of SCP, SPCCP. Call 80th Battalion of the Bravo and start with an ER emergency response script and talked about 15 days later and make sure the aquifers and environmental hasn't been tampered with and the clean is cleaned up properly. Also, Miracle Tank Solutions will also aid in any kind of it's a booklet with all kind of cleaning process methods and procedures for cleaning up any kind of spill or any chemical. OSC determined in exceeded and reportable quantities will notify regulatory authorities as required. Any spill required notification. Regulatory authorities will be reported to the next higher headquarters in 40 CFR 112 is 4, 40 CFR 300 and 125, 33 CFR 153 subpart B, 40 CFR 302. Also, that is known as dope cleaning and stuff. Anyways, assist federal state agencies in response to spills outside of the Army property and where practicable accordance to RA 75-15 from others outside of the conventional United States. OCONUS installation provided response assistance for the spills of Army property in accordance with their applicable final grade final grades standards and Garrison CPCP, which stands for I'm not right on it, but it might go over itself. Further guidance in managing ASTs and equipment subject to 40 CFR 112 referred to 2 April 2004 DO Joint Service Spill Prevention Control Countermeasures as SPCCP Spill Prevention Control Countermeasures Guidance. Chapter 12, Environmental Cleanup Policy complies with applicable federal, state, local Department of Defense requirements for cleanup and containment of Army installation. Formerly used as defense sites. FUDs. Figure in 1211 depicts the differences and commonalities among the various cleanup and program areas of overseas installations. Only compliance related to cleanup CC program applies. Accomplish and early connected public involvement into the cleanup program. Keep standards. Regulatory agencies. U.S. Environmental Protection Agency (EPA). The Environmental Protection Agency informed of the cleanup program activities and as appropriate. The Defense Environment. Here's a chart on the Defense Environmental Restoration, known as DERP, and on the side is in compliance related cleanup, and in the Venn diagram is an active installation, excess installation, special installations, formerly used defense systems on the Defensive Restoration Program side, and compliance with the cleanup CC recommendations overseas. Military Munitions Response Program MMRP is in both the base realignment course of BRAC and the Defense Environmental Restoration of DERB. The BRAC 88, BRAC 91, BRAC 93, BRAC 95, and BRAC 05. The Army Environmental Cleanup Program. 112, Legal and Other Requirements. The first list of statutory requirements apply to environmental cleanup. 42 U.S. Standard Code 9601. 40 CFR 300, Section 120, Part 190, Title 29 Code Federal Regulations, 29 CFR 1910 112, Executive Order 2058 80, 40 U.S. Standard Code 6901, Section 304 U, 304V, 308H, Section 2701, Title 10 U.S. Standard Code 10 U.S. Standard Code 27001, DOD 7000.14R, DOD issuance 4715.7 for above the overseas installation, DOD issuance 715.8, engineering regulations ER 200-3-1, formerly U.S. defense sites as FUDs, program policies, charters, formerly used defensive Site Program 31, October 2003. Office Assistant Secretary of Army Installation and Environmental, OSAA. INE, Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army Environmental Safety Occupational Health, DASA, ESHO, Memorandum 18, June 2004, Subject Environmental Compliance related to cleanup program eligibility. The environmental cleanup programs include Army DERP and activity closing, realigning, installation DERP and funds properties compliance related to cleanup CC and activity access and installation, including the overseas regulations to pertain. Environmental cleanup programs is referenced in Appendix A. Defense Environmental Restoration Program, DERPS and Cleanup Installation Restoration and Program IRP, Military Munitions Response Program, MMRP, based on your alignment and enclosure, BRAC, FUDs, address hazardous substances, pollutants, contaminants, military munitions, sites consistent within provision of 42 U.S. Standard Code 9601, intent sequence circular of 40 CFR 300, National Oil Hazardous Substance Pollution Continuance Planning, EO F12, 580, 42 U.S. Standard Code 16901, Section 304, U 304, E 308, H, and activities as the resulted in contaminated prior to 17 October 1986 at the non-permitted sites. Compliance related to cleanup and address cleanup requirements as they are legally mandated but eligible for the funding under the Army DERP and program focus the remediation of contamination of the other overseas and facilities and determining not included occupational and remedy to contamination of covered environmental aspects of aspirational orders and similar operational directives and cleanup contamination results in operations that have occurred since 1986, including the sites of activity Army, Army Reserve, Army National Guard, RNG federal owner facilities, as well as cleanup non-federal owned, federal supported, state-owned, state-operated Army National Guard facilities. The CC does not include initial response actions, address bills, but does not include the following on the response action. If required, DERP is supplemented by the DoD Management Guidance of Defense Environmental Restoration of DERP Section September 2001. DERP Management Guidance defines eligibility, addresses sites, and following of these three program categories: RIP, response actions, address release of hazardous substances, pollutants, contaminants were defined as circulated petroleum, oil, lubrications, POL, DOD, unique materials, hazardous waste and low level radioactive materials, low level radioactive LLRW for the IRP includes the material munitions, including munitions and explosive of concern MECA, and C, the glossary of munitions consistent with the MRC relative small numbers. All cite to the following. These three conditions all exist. These releases occurred prior to 30 to September 2004 release on the site of the operational range activity, ammunition demilitarization, and activity waste military munitions, waste material munitions treatment and disposal of units and FUDs of the site identified included the Army Environmental Database Restoration EDBR and formerly U.S. Defense Sites Management Information FUDs submitted prior to September 200 September 2000 was not classified as response complete, and the MMRP addressed munitions responsive to activity BRAC installations where the release occurred prior to the 30 September 2002 release at the site that is not FUDs on operational range activity munitions. The militarization activity, WMM treatment and disposal operated after 30 September 2002 and then shall not be identified, including the AEDBR, which stands for the Army Environmental Database Restoration, prior to 30 days of September 2000, and building demolition debris removal are called BD and DR. Addresses demolition removal of unsafe buildings and structures and facilities on the sites where owned and leased and otherwise possessed in the United States and other jurisdiction of the DoD. 12.3 major program goals: perform appropriate cost-effective cleanup so that the property of the Army uses of transport appropriate, sustains operation, training asks, protects human health and environment. 12.4 program requirements: cleanup program areas. All cleanup program area must be identified cleanup requirements at the site of the level using more stringent and current projected for future land use of the documentation, installation, master development, reasonable schedule and cost, cleanup, complete cleanup of record and liabilities of database records, and first cleanup until regulatory agreements with site closure, and provide site data added in response to the Assistant Chief of Staff Installation Management (ACSIM) data calls for the updates of um, database of records developed, maintain an administrative record for the National Priority List (NPL) sites of the similar documentation of the non-NPL sites of installation U.S. Army Corps engineering, distribute direct response of FUDs, prepare annual cost estimates for each of the program, reflect environmental strategy sequences presented in installation action IAP and BRAC AIP FUDs management action map, and maintaining audit and full changes in a current official year of FY reflects actions taken. Changes in estimated and nearly deleted requirements estimated must be based on reliable, completable, fully documented, will be a constant year dollars LD Public Law 101-576 determination contaminant migration. Garrison commanders must approve off-site data collection any and off-site monitoring to ensure contamination has been migrated off-site. EO 125880 at circular sites, a PD other sites. Notify DASA ESHO as in the chain of command prior to initiating any off-site response actions, and the Army has authority to conduct response actions outside installation boundary. However, as the lack of Army control over the installation of property, potential legal and technical complexity of sensitive, and the necessity of increased public involvement requires additional oversights on these. Response notification requirement does not apply to the FUDs. Maintaining permanent documentation repository to ensure cleanup information is available to protect the future reliability in any date of the future documentation. Environmental response decision, a circular recorded decision ROD, the equivalent decision of DD of the decision document action of the Department prior to conducting removal or remedial action. Conduct coordination of remedial documentation of national resource trustees with cooperative regulatory agencies to ensure the Army cleanups goals that are accomplished by cost effectively in accordance with the applicable laws and regulations. Fully supported public involvement in cleanup programs with potential impact of the health, environmental, and economical well-being local community. Maintain inventories, maps of land use of controls LUC and resulting in responding decisions, activity installation, integrated installation master plan, establish procedures evaluating implemented remedies, authorization of all performance effectiveness of remedy, control operation maintenance, and cost of remedies, remedial operation phases as the remedial action objectives specified by the RODDD, which is the deciding document for the site that has been achieved, whether the treatment and systems are still needed, determine the different remedial objective, different technologies are more appropriate. Army Defense Environmental Restoration Program DRP addresses the site real property as U.S. jurisdiction, custody, and control of the Army to include U.S. Title 10 U.S. Standard Code 2701 C activities access U.S. Army Reserves installation facilities, federal owned lease Army National Guard installation activities, proper priorities, contract activities, leases, and other tenants of Army installation facilities. The Army DRP addresses contamination at the site on activity installation in three categories described previously: IRP, MRP, and BDR, which is building destruction and debris. I'm trying to stay up to date on this. What's it say? Building destruction and debris removal. The Army funds the DRP the active installation of the environmental restoration, and the EARA funds authorized or appropriated specifically to execute DRP and active installation. ERA's funds must be used in restoration projects approved by IAP for sites included the AEDB-R LD 10 U.S. Standard Code 2703 IRP category sites conducted and screened for the past hazardous substance and pollutants, contamination, potential of contamination reassessment, and if appropriate for activity at Army and federal owned and National Guard Bureau, Army National Guard installations and sub-installations of 10 United States Code 2701 conducted studies response actions in accordance with the annual AIP approval with the Garrison Committee equivalent, established information repository admission record to provide public access to information about the cleanup activities and installation. 42 U.S. Standard Code 9613 96020 establish effective community involvement with program including the community relationship CRP and NPL sites. 40 CFR 155 public involvement responsive plans for the Army installation within active cleanup program. Negotiating the Federal Facilities Agreement, Interagencies Agreement, and NPL site complying with the DoD approved model agreement. See Circular Section 128 E2 120 E4 establishing Technical Review Committee TRC Restoration Advisory Board RAB the applicable to allow community operation participate in remedy section process form RAB and who all A to all BRAC where closer involves transfer property of communities unless otherwise determined of ACSIM and installation of NMPL RAB will requirements of paragraph C of section 2705 title 10 United States Code title 10 USC 2705C and TRC LD 10 USC 2705D initiate actions expeditiously deleted from the NPLA and the Environmental Protection Agency. Once all completion criteria met, request partially delisting specifically operable units and appropriate 40 UFC 340-25. The MRP category sites conducting response activities address military munitions of chemical residues of munitions of activity installations. The BDR, the building demolition and debris removal program category responses buildings unused since 1986 may be undertaken when the requirements to demolish the buildings is integral as the activities of IRP and MMRP category response. Any other ERG is funded by the building destruction demolition debris cleanup probably program category response buildings used since 17 October 1986 only undertaken specifically authorized by Assistant Deputy Undersecretary of Defense of Environmental Safety Occupational Health ADUSD ESOH base realignment closure BRAC cleanup program address sites and installation designed for closure realignment and base closure legislation is funded by base closure account BCA and DoD's DERP authorities at closing installation and cleanup requirements consistent with previously identified IRP MRP category requirements and plus the closure related to the compliance actions required to the property transfer BRC cleanup program may be addressed by BDR category requirements for the unsafe buildings or structure unused and since the 1986 and whether the activities integral parts of the action under the IRP MMRP category response Army activities will update the BRAC AIP's annual and ensure the BRAC cleanup activities comply with the ADUSDE and policy guidance of the fast track cleanups and the base redevelopment and realignment manual. Since transfer BRAC and property and produce reuse compliance related cleanup CC includes the address contamination of the Army facilities overseeing contaminant resulting from operations have occurred from 1986 that is not DERP in the Army activity access special installations of Army National Guard federally owned facilities containing emanation at the unfederal owned federal supported Army National Guard facilities CC and projects are projects needed to other further investigate and necessary conduct a response to action and the components of that present imminent sustaining threat to human health and environment undertaking CC projects when needed to address the following requirements. Release the circular RCA a corrective action not eligible for funding in the DoD management guidance of DIRT. For example, release if they occurred on after 17 October 1986, clean managed under authority of federal state environmental laws that they are not addressed in other cleaning programs, for example, DIRT and BRAC and so forth, and release hazardous waste treatment, storage, and disposal facilities (TSDF) solid waste lands that undergoing the RCRA, and release the RCRA underground storage tank UST if it was service of the 17th October 1986. The contamination beyond the installation border when necessary to protect human health and environmental not eligible for DIRT funding. Contamination of overseas installation in accordance with the DoDI issuance of 4715.8 contamination non-federal owned federally supported Army National Guard site regardless of the date. Munitions response range is closed after 30 September 2002. Response actions outside boundaries operational required as a result of ranging assessment program established in accordance with DoD 4715.11 not DIRT environmental liabilities, access installations, Army commands, ACOMs, Army Surface Component Commands, ASCC, direct reporting, DRUs. Special installation will program budget and the working capital resource of non-DERP, which is, I don't know, what is non-DERP. The CCM, which is eligible release special installation, are eligible for Army DERP consistent with the DERP eligibility requirements. Other than informally, user use defenses sites of FUDs under the DERP FUDs programs addresses properties that were under jurisdiction of the Secretary of Department owned and leased and otherwise produced in the United States, otherwise under the operational control of Secretary of Defense military components that were transferred from the DoD control prior to 17 October 1986. The FUD program addresses sites following program site. The categories IRP, MMRP, building demolition, cleanup, and are as eligible for DoD sites of transfer after 17 October 1986. The completed findings of determined eligible of the FDE, the final inventory project report, INPR, signed prior to the September 2000, stating the property of the FUDs eligible that were listed in restoration management information of the RMIS, the FUDs property prior to September 2000. 80 USD ESHO establish overall FUDs, a program policy budget guidance regardless of which is military service formally controlled the property of the Army Executive Agency Administrative Funds Program General Policy Management Execution FUDs program is provided by the DoD Management Guidance of DERP FUDs Program Charter, the ASA, INE, and ASCSIM, respectively. Army Secretary, Army Staff, ARSTAF, proponent of the FUDs program, USACE, and is responsible for management execution of the FUDs program. Specifically, FUD execution guidance and procedures is provided by USACE and Engineering Regulations, ER 200-3.1, Defense State Memorandum Agreement Cooperative Agreement, DoD, the Defense of State Memorandum Agreement Cooperative Agreement, DSMOA-CA, and program involves state and territorial governments, environmental restoration, and DoD installation, including FUDs properties, Office of Secretary of Defense, OSDs, and has been given an Army authority to negotiate the DSMOAs and recommended recommended approval of the DSMOAs, and to the AD, USD, ESOH, USA execute the DSMOA CA program for all military services. Authority to programs is contained in the Title 10 of the U.S. Standard Code 2701D, which allows the Secretary of Defense to enter the agreements of reimbursement basis of the state territories that support DERP cleanup after DoD installation. The DSMOA and CSA program does not apply to compliance related to cleanup. CC specific criteria funding information services eligible for state reimbursement for the program is contained within Part 288.35, Title 57, Federal Registry 572835, dated 29/1992. Funding Army contribution to DSMOA CA will provide Army and ERA environmental restoration of FUDs, ER and F and BS accounts. Memorandum understanding between DoD and Agency of Toxic Substances, Diseases, and Registry of the DoD has entered in the MOU and ATSDR delineates the responsible procedures under which Agency Toxic Substances Disease Registry ATSDR DoD will conduct activities mandated by Circular MOA MOU and signal documentation governing the relationship between DoD and ATSDR. The funding of the ATSDSR Army related to state studies with the MOU and DoD provided the Army from the ERA and ERF and BCA accounts. Army each military account component funds in the ATSDR services refers to the U.S. Army Environmental Restoration Program Guidance and Manual Guidelines for the Coordination of Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, circular activities between agency and toxic substance and disease register and Department of Defense. Additional information about the roles of ATSDR DoD components in DoD cleaning activities. Except the above environmental cleanup does not apply, and contractor owned and contractor operated. They're not on real property controlled by Army. Properties that are not real property that is owned and controlled otherwise in jurisdiction of the DoD. The third party sites. A response and release occurred solely as a result of an act of war. CFR. Emergency responsive cleanup, a response from any routine opportunity management, maintenance, and operation Army facility site of that does not become a cleanup project. Routine range of maintenance sustaining activities of operational ranges. Check 13, Environmental Quality Technology. Or Chapter 13.